Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about the full moon in Leo, which we've got just around the corner, 1st or 2nd of Feb, depending on where you are in the world. For us in the UK, on GMT, 1st of February. This full moon, like other full moons, of course, great lunar energy to work with when it comes to releasing. And we've been doing a lot of that with closing out cycles, particularly over the past 6 months, over the past year, after 2025. But also full moons can illuminate. So they can illuminate stuff that we need to be aware of and provide clarity. And we've also had a lot of that with what Neptune's been showing us, of course. But this full moon in Leo, if we look at the essence of Leo, there is that courage that, of course, we may receive illumination where we still need to apply some courage. There's also something about being heart-led. So that might be something else. And particularly when it comes to the moon, the emotional home, we might need to really look at where that heart-led essence is required, okay, almost putting that first. But also, Leo is about being seen for the authentic essence, okay, because Leos carry that confidence of who they are. This is about being seen, showing up as who you are in your authentic capacity, okay, and that's where also some courage might be needed. But ultimately, it's about being yourself and showing yourself. So there could be illumination over where that's needed, and certainly factors relating to the emotional home that need to be looked at as part of this full moon energy. But also there's a bigger picture, as always, with the astrology. Now, first of all, we know that the sun is in direct opposition to the moon for a full moon. The sun being in Aquarius, because we are in Aquarius season, and there's a lot of energy packed into Aquarius. We've got the stellium plus some supporting cast members, and of course the sun is there, the luminary is there. So from a soul essence perspective, there's a lot going on. So it's about trying to balance what's going on a soul level with what is going on an emotional level in terms of the Leo Aquarius axis, okay? Both those signs are fixed signs, so there can feel like some rigidity or even some stubbornness coming through. But also, if you look at the positive side to that, it can be very determined. So if there's things that you're trying to work towards and you just need that bit of courage to propel yourself forward as that authentic essence, there is some underpinning determination here. So this is what could carry you forward, okay, into the next chapter, the next lunar cycle. And we know we're building up to the next big lunar event, which is the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius. That's going to happen on the 17th of Feb. That's when the year of the fire horse starts as well. So we've got, from this full moon to that new moon, a couple of weeks. And of course, building that momentum in terms of what's going on. And of course, with Saturn moving into Aries in between that time as well. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the astrology. There's a lot going on in the energy, as some of you may be able to feel. And I'm going to show you the chart for the moment of the full moon, just to give you some insights in terms of, the other planetary aspects and planetary bodies and, how this could be playing out collectively. Of course, if you're looking at it against your own chart, that's going to give you a better idea in terms of how it could be influencing you for this particular full moon. So let's jump into it. Let's see what we've got going on. And let's remember that, we're looking at the energy of Leo, the energy of Aquarius, as well as the other factors. But ultimately, it's about emerging as that rebirthed self with the innovation of Aquarius and the individualistic traits, but also from a heart-led perspective of Leo and showing up as that authentic self. So showing up with authenticity may require bravery and courage, and it's that sort of energy we're looking at. Okay, right, let's jump into the chart. So bear with me whilst I pull it up on the screen here. Okay, here we go. All right, so full moon in Leo. As I said, it's the 1st or 2nd of Feb, depending on where you are in the world. So for us in the UK on GMT, It's 22:08:07. So you might as well say it's 22:09, 9 minutes past 10 at night. But this is the moment when they form the exact opposition of 13 degrees, 3 minutes. Okay. So 1st of Feb for most of us, but Australia, it will be the 2nd of Feb. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. So even though, full moon, it's about working with the energy to release. Of course, we've understood that there are cycles that need to close out. So if there's also cycles that have been hindering your authenticity, that's something else. This lunar event, the energy could support you in releasing that. There's been this consistent theme of endings and beginnings from 2025, still now going into 2026, because we're trying to move away from what no longer aligns with us. So that rebirthed self being the true self, but recognizing that other things, situations, experiences, connections are going to naturally fall out of alignment. So it's releasing those patterns, releasing those cycles and moving forwards. There's been a lot of that already. This is just another sort of opportunity to work with the lunar energy with the intention of releasing anything that's hindered your authenticity, anything that has hindered your courage or bravery, where you felt like you've not been able to really show yourself as who you are, and to own that regalness of Leo as well. If there's been certain factors, certain experiences where you've not really been able to lead with the heart because it's all been very mind driven, or it's been some other focus, then it's also calling this back into yourself, into the heart space, and therefore releasing those patterns that have been not aligned with that as well. Okay, so those are just some examples, but of course, take how it resonates, if at all. Okay, always use your discernment with these things. So moon in Leo, and the opposition, of course, to the sun in Aquarius, and whoosh, look at all of that energy in Aquarius. Now, I covered this in an astrology report last week, and I was talking about the conjunctions that were happening. So, of course, as the planets move, they're going to form different conjunctions. So they're all doing a little merry dance with each other. And that's quite symbolic of a lot of change, a lot of heavy energy in the air, where certain factors, certain aspects are working together. And of course, what energy that can create. So we know we've got the sun there, opposition to the moon, full moon. Okay. So the soul essence is in Aquarius because we're in Aquarius season. And there is emphasis on the soul as that innovative self, the new reality that we're carving out for ourselves, but how we, on a soul level, can embrace the innovation. We know what's going on in terms of innovation and technology and all of those other things out there on our path that we might be incorporating as part of our path going forward. We're having to adapt to a lot of things like that. There's lots of technological advancements going on. So that is the sort of name of the game at the moment. And how are we adapting to that? Do we need to pivot to adapt to that more, but ensuring it's in alignment with our own rebirthed self? Okay, so not doing anything under a facade or anything like that. This is about owning the integrity within us, but also recognizing that yes, there's been pivots, there's been changes, but this is the rebirth that's coming from our own individualistic traits, where we're trying to carve out the future that we want for our lives, and how our own quirkiness can enable us to get there. So that's certainly part of the innovation and recognizing that. But because Aquarius also rules the 11th house, it's also about, connections with people. And at the moment, it could be that is a topic of prominence because it's wanting to connect with, kindred spirits, soul tribe, wanting to connect with others that are, part of your path going forward in terms of this new reality. So there are changes in terms of our connections as well. So it's embracing all of that from a soul level, but also with other stuff going on. And with Pluto and Mars there, first of all, 3 degrees, 7 degrees. So, they are still close to each other, and that's heavy masculine energy. And by the side, we've got Vesta. So that's the sacred flame essence of that divine feminine asteroid, reminding us to create from that place of the sacred flame. So the masculine energy, although there can be this sort of friction, tension, if we're not fully aligned, if we're pursuing that sacred flame energy, it's matching that, innovative self going forward. So there's a reminder to still create from a place of the sacred flame, and to not just be taking action willy-nilly, that's not aligned with what we're trying to achieve here. The other side of the sun, we've got Venus and Mercury. So, Venus in terms of our boundaries, and also that divine feminine energy reminding us to create from that place of boundaries. But certainly where we are wanting to expand our connections, making sure that we're investing in the right people, the right things, the right experiences. We're investing our time and our attention and our energy in those things that are aligned for us. And with Mercury and Aquarius, how we communicate as that authentic expression going forward, aligned with that. So recognizing it's all part of the picture, and it relates to change. So there's heavy emphasis, like there's been for quite a while, on change and transformation. And, underpinning that is, we need to have our boundaries in check. We need to invest our resources in the right things and people. We need to communicate from that place of authenticity, and perhaps in an innovative way. So communicating with some people may have worked a certain way up to a certain period of time. Now, because of pivots and changes, adaptations to communication might be needed, because this is the new path going forward. So it's like creating and innovating. There's something about creating and innovating here with this Aquarius energy and all of this planetary energy, with the luminary of the sun right in the middle as well. Okay, so there's a lot going on. So the full moon, the moon is opposite all of that energy. Mainly the sun, because that's direct opposition, but the Leo energy is still opposite all this Aquarius energy. And it's not to say that we have to choose between being heart-led and showing up as our true self with courage versus the innovation that we want to see. It's enabling that energy to work together. It might feel a bit push-pull type energy, where connections are not resonant anymore with the path, or where we're trying to maybe force something to be that's not aligned with the new way of being. So it could be a number of factors that can just create that opposition type energy. Okay. And yeah, recognizing communication is a part of this. And the reason why I say that is because I was just reminded about, the fire and air essence here. Now, in July of this year, 2026, the nodes are going to change. So at the moment, North Node is in Pisces and the South Node is in Virgo. But in July, they're going to change, and the nodes always move in retrograde motion. So the North Node will become Aquarius and the South Node will become Leo. So there might be some foreshadowing here with what's going on. But essentially, I feel that with the North Node going to be in Aquarius, there is more of that humanitarian path moving forward, but it's absolutely driven by innovation and technological advancements. Okay, and that is the path we're aligning with. So that's coming up in the summer. Let's get back to this one. So all that energy in Aquarius, and I've marked up certain aspects here, as I often do in my reports, just to show you what I was drawn to. Okay, now first of all, if we're looking at the moon specifically, there is a trine that is going across to Ceres in Aries. So that is another divine feminine asteroid, and with Ceres, this is about planting the seeds based on what you want to experience or achieve. Okay, so in Aries, they're like sovereign seeds, if you like. Okay, so it's important that we are doing that based on what we want and what we want to pursue, but we need to sort of lay the groundwork for what we're trying to achieve. So if we're planting those metaphorical seeds step by step, because this is what we want to achieve at the end goal, then of course that's in alignment with the sovereign path. So the trine between those two, fire energy, okay, the cardinal energy between the two is Aries. So it's about the self, focus on the self and what we want. There is a sextile with the sun. So there is supporting energy from the sun as well. So from a soul essence perspective, as well as the emotional home of the moon, this is about moving in the direction of what we want. But we do need to apply that groundwork to get to where we want. Okay, that is ultimately the success of this with past Fortuna close by this particular moment. So if we're focusing on releasing things that don't align with what we're trying to plant going forwards, then of course that is going to contribute to the sovereign success of that. Ceres is also in a couple of squares. So let's just pay attention to those, because squares are challenging energy. And there's a square to Juno, that's also a divine feminine asteroid, and a square to Jupiter, currently retrograde in Cancer. So all of those signs, Cancer, Capricorn, and Aries, are cardinal. There could feel like a bit of a butting of heads here. But Juno, okay, represents love and commitment. She is associated with love and marriage, but I very much view her as love and commitment, because we can talk about soul contracts, we can talk about commitment to the self, commitment to the path, okay, and looking at different things. If we're looking at it specifically from a place of love, then of course we can look at relationships as part of that as well. So it might be that there's some challenge within contracts, within connections, if we're looking at that specifically, that are not aligned with what we're trying to achieve, you know, and by that I mean we're planting the seeds based on what we want, and therefore we need to ensure that we are detaching from contracts, cycles, connections that don't align with that vision. Now, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, Jupiter in retrograde offers that inner expansion, because it's very expansive energy, inner expansion. Because Jupiter was the original ruler of Pisces, I also feel that during this retrograde, there's spiritual enlightenment for a lot of people. So that's still a benefit, but of course we might be understanding more about certain soul contracts or the general commitment to our path. If we've not followed through on things before, that's offering us some kind of inner expansion, because we're recognizing it. And this is part of the Saturnian lessons as well, by the way, but we're recognizing that, and that's offering that inner expansion. And it's enabling us to nurture ourselves through the process as we discover more. But there's also this message about being open to what's being shown to us. So we might be seeing, or have been seeing, where we have restricted ourselves, you know, from not being open to the path we want to create, and being quite sort of unrealistic with our expectations, for example. But there needs to be that cardinal drive. Now, of course, because of those squares, we've got this opposition then between Jupiter and Juno. But interestingly, you know, Juno is directly opposite, more so, the midheaven. So aspirations when it comes to, you know, our soul contracts and things, are they meeting our aspirations? And the challenge might be, well, okay, they were at one point, they served a purpose, but now this is about aligning with that innovative self going forward. Not only that, if we look at the energy of Jupiter and Juno, I think I'm right in saying here, this is about Zeus and Hera. So there is a bit of opposition in counterpart energy here as well. Okay, so this is just an extra message, because from a divine counterpart perspective, there could still be a bit of opposition because of needing to be open to the path, and to also recognize the sort of boundaries and the inner authority that's needed to achieve what we're trying to achieve on our path. So having some direction, in that way. And that direction comes from us, because remember, Jupiter and Juno point back in those squares to Ceres. So it's about understanding that the key thing is focusing on the self and what you're trying to metaphorically plant, those seeds you want to put in place in order to grow what it is you want to grow. It needs nurturing, it needs watering. Okay, so it needs that attention. And so you take the action, you make those steps towards what you're trying to achieve and grow, and then nurture the process, okay, by being open to what it's showing you, because at different stages it's going to show you different things. So that, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but hopefully you get the message with that. It's about recognizing what you're trying to create for yourself, and anything that doesn't align with that in terms of other people's expectations or soul contracts that have perhaps fulfilled their purpose. This is about moving forward with that new way of being, and that's what opens up the new soul contracts. Okay, and soul contracts can be with things, jobs, people, okay, however that resonates for you. Juno is also, by the way, entrine to the South Node in Virgo. So the harmonious aspect there is that is allowing us to detach from the past, where we have had those expectations that might have been unrealistic, like something has to be a certain way, has to work out a certain way with this person, it has to be like this. We're perhaps understanding that that's not realistic, it's not achievable. This is about following our path and allowing things to be as they are, because ultimately that's where the clarity comes through. And that's where that enlightenment comes in to play as well. Okay. Now, I can't not mention Saturn and Aries. Saturn and Neptune. Saturn in Aries is going to be a big thing, by the way. So I got a bit carried away there. But Saturn, currently in Pisces. Neptune now in Aries. But yes, Saturn will be moving into Aries very soon. 13th or 14th of Feb, depending on where you are in the world. For us in the UK, 14th of Feb. So it's happy Valentine's Day to us, because that moment when he leaves Pisces and goes into Aries is going to be sigh of relief. Okay, it's not to say the lessons are going to stop, but Pisceans are going to resonate with this. It's been a pretty intense past few years because of the Saturnian lessons, okay? And let's be real. Saturn in Pisces is not an easy energy, because Pisces doesn't have any boundaries. It's very flowy, it's very up in the clouds, and Saturn wants structure and wants you to get things done. So he's wanted us to get into alignment with our spiritual truth. And therefore the lessons can be quite harsh, because it's like, well, does that align with your values? Does that align with your truth? What are you going to do about it? You're going to put boundaries in place? You're going to take your power back? And it's understanding, and how we understand those things is through experiences and tests and things like that. And they can be quite uncomfortable, but we need to learn the lesson. Okay, so it's been quite intense. And then he's going to move into Aries, and he's going to serve up lessons in Aries. But Neptune's already there, of course, preparing the space for him. And there's some degree of like that Neptunian fog, certainly when Neptune was at the anaretic degree of Pisces, and, that karmic energy that comes up, and very confusing, and where is my path going? Sort of, feelings like that Neptunian fog. And all of that is to really encourage us to navigate that Neptunian fog by going in and checking in with the source energy, because, of course, Neptune is that spiritual energy, source energy within, intuition, inner compass. So the fog, the haze, okay, don't know what's going on, I'm confused. It's forcing us to go within to understand what our intuition is telling us. And that can be challenging, because it's perhaps shown us where we've always looked outside of ourselves for the answers. And now Neptune in Aries, wake up call. Okay, it's like wake up to who you are as the self. you know. And all right, soft energy whilst in Pisces, because Neptune rules Pisces, but it's still been quite confusing. There's still been illusionary stuffs, deception that we've needed to pay attention to, as well as connecting deeper into our subconscious, you know, and following our inner compass. So again, I went off on a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to mention those two because in this chart, the moon is actually in a sesqui square to Saturn and Neptune, and they are in square to Lilith, who is retrograde in Sag. And Lilith is also a great teacher. But, you know, this would say it can still be quite intense on an emotional level when we're looking at, you know, what Saturn is still showing us as he closes out his time in Pisces, because he wants us in alignment with our spiritual truth. And this wake up call to recognize, right, okay, this is who I am. And it's not necessarily anything more than just kind of the focus on the self, you know, and what we want. And maybe that's where the courage is needed. So it's kind of like, okay, I've gone through all these Saturnian lessons whilst he's been in Pisces, and I've had to really understand what my soul's truth is. But now I need to apply that going forward, and I need that courage because I'm going to show up as who I am, as my authentic self. So that could be some of the lessons learnt, and it enables, with the courage, to then propel you forward, okay, based on what it is you want to pursue or that which you want to create. But it's from a place of the self. And remember, with those two, you know, Neptune has just started a new cycle in Aries. Saturn is still closing out a cycle in Pisces. There's still this energy of endings and beginnings. So recognizing that I've gained that wisdom, I still need to close that cycle out, but I'm aware of what it is. It's going to take some courage to do this. I need to show up as my authentic self, etc., etc. It's the awareness of it. So it's rather than avoiding what's coming up and suppressing it, because Lilith can show us where we might be suppressing things. And in Sag, it's kind of like, what are we learning and discovering about where we have suppressed ourselves before? Why have we done that? What pattern needs to be looked at? What trauma needs to be looked at? Is there any additional healing that we need to do? Is that holding us back in terms of being heart-led? Because we've taken a lot on our plate and we've had to deal with it. And it's been a quite testing time. So it's been hard to then lead with the heart because it's like there's too much stuff going on. But it's bringing it back to that essence of the unconditional love, being heart-led, but ultimately having that love for yourself as well, to pursue what it is you want and to show up as your authentic self also, because that is showing that you own who you are. And that's very much that Leo energy, the confidence of being who you are, no matter what anybody else thinks, no matter what anybody else says, and overcoming the shadow aspects that might have meant that that's been suppressed in the past for whatever reason. You know, I've held myself back because of this. And that can be experiences, that can be connections, it can be a number of things. So it's just taking on board what we've been learning, what we've been discovering, and how that can be applied going forward as another sort of like badge of armor, if you like. So that's going to support us going forward by being stronger based on what we've learned and what we've experienced and what we've understood. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, this full moon is coming, and then we've got the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius, 17th of Feb. So that's opening up the eclipse portal. So that's also quite big energy going on. And at that point, Saturn will be in Aries. So we've got that new beginning again with Saturn. He would have closed out that cycle. So there's a lot going on. And of course, a few days after the new moon solar eclipse, we've got the Neptune-Saturn exact conjunction, same degrees, same minutes. And that is the two energies coming together, and really, it feels like awakening energy. It feels like a bold power move. I've said that before. So if we're aligning with that energy from our own perspective in terms of a bold power move that we want to make that is in alignment with what we're trying to achieve, Okay, that might give us a boost, that motivational energy to do that because of the cardinal energy of Aries. But we don't want to get lost in any Neptunian fog. We need to still recognize the discernment that we need for ourselves. Okay, our intuition, our inner compass, and not always looking for those answers outside ourselves. It's about understanding what our soul is showing us, our inner compass, you know, what that's guiding us towards in terms of our path. And yeah, just recognizing that the self is a pivotal part of this, the rebirthed self, but also the authentic heart-led self as well. Okay, so I wish you all the best. Of course, I'll see you on the next video. There's lots to cover in the astrology, as we know. I'm still keen to hear your feedback. Thank you so much to those of you who have already given your feedback on what works well for you and maybe what could be improved. It's really helpful because, again, it's about innovation. It's about pivoting and moving with the times and just seeing what content helps people and what doesn't. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next video. Take care.